Some breaking news right now. Disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has taken his own life while he was behind bars here in New York City. Epstein was facing trafficking charges.
And what if one of America's most carefully packaged family men wasn't just brushing up against Jeffrey Epstein's world, but operating inside the same protected ecosystem that allowed powerful predators to remain untouchable for decades? That is the question now hanging over Steve Harvey as new Epstein files reach Washington in November 2025, revealing a familiar pattern of names, timelines, and comfortable friendships that are becoming increasingly difficult to explain away. This is not a random mention buried in a stray email. It is a web in which Epstein's emails, Diddy's conviction, and Harvey's own household drama appear to converge around the same years, the same inner circles, and the same unsettling silence.
I think it reinforced the research that I did on my book that Jeffrey Epstein has always viewed himself as smarter than everybody else, and he also has collected people all along the way, particularly over the 2 decades through his trafficking. And that was always to get secrets and bits of information about individuals that he could pass to other people. He trafficked it.
In mid-November 2025, lawmakers in the U.S. House released more than 20,000 pages from the so-called Epstein files, covering correspondence from roughly 2008 to 2019. These documents include emails in which Epstein bragged that Donald Trump knew about the girls and referenced long hours spent at his homes, backed by witnesses such as House staff who confirmed how much the former president saw. At the same time, Democrats and Republicans argued over which emails were being cherry-picked, with each side accusing the other of trying to shape the narrative. On the surface, it sounded political, but for our purposes, it proves one thing. These files are not gossip. They are now part of the public record, pulling more names and more relationships into the light. Now layer that over what happened with Sean Diddy Combs in 2024. After years of rumors and civil cases, federal prosecutors brought a sweeping case against him, built on testimony from ex-partners and former insiders who described what they called freak-offs, dating back to at least 2008. By mid-2025, a New York jury had cleared him of the most severe charges, such as racketeering, conspiracy, and trafficking by force, but still found him guilty on 2 counts of transporting people across state and international lines for paid intimate encounters. Each count carries up to 10 years, and he is currently serving a 50-month sentence at a federal facility in New Jersey, with a newly adjusted projected release date of June 2028 due to a status change behind bars. While his legal team plans to appeal and he continues to deny wrongdoing, the testimony about prolonged, choreographed encounters, filmed and used as leverage, has already shattered the wholesome mogul image he once projected.
Her, doesn't it? She probably wants to get out early. So I think that we have more digging to do. I think the DOJ transparency effort here is the right thing. But the reason it's on a Friday, Will, is I think there are no smoking guns. There's other places we have to look.
Well, Buck, you appropriate.
This is where Steve Harvey enters the frame. While Epstein was sending strange, arrogant emails about presidents and power brokers, and Diddy was allegedly building an entire shadow operation to manage his private appetites, Harvey was rising as daytime television's moral referee. He was the man lecturing callers and guests about standards, responsibility, and how women should demand more from men. Yet behind that polished image, his own ex-wife Mary was accusing him, in filings and online videos, of psychological torment, financial manipulation, and what she dramatically described as soul destruction, a term she used for a mix of alleged torture, deprivation, and mental breaking. A $60 million lawsuit she filed in 2017, claiming everything from conspiracy against rights to emotional torment, was ultimately thrown out on jurisdictional grounds, with the judge stating it belonged in Texas and Harvey's team dismissing it as frivolous and completely false. But the accusations themselves never truly disappeared. They simply stopped being discussed on camera.
He took my Winton from me. He turned my son against me.
By 2019, all of these threads were moving at the same time. Epstein was still alive, emailing journalists and associates. Diddy remained at the top of music and nightlife, running brands and hosting carefully curated events. And Steve Harvey's household was turning into a tabloid storyline because of his stepdaughter, Lori. That summer, Lori Harvey, then in her early 20s, was photographed repeatedly with Diddy, who was in his late 40s. They were seen traveling in Cabo, walking through New York in matching outfits, and having lunch in Italy with Lori's mother and Steve Harvey sitting at the same table. Photos from August showed Lori with her arm around Diddy while dining with her parents, an image that instantly turned a rumored romance into a public talking point. Fans flooded comment sections, asking why a man who built his career as America's dad appeared comfortable with his stepdaughter being romantically linked to someone nearly 3 decades older, especially a man already shadowed by long-running whispers of controlling behavior and odd private gatherings.
Her mother is 54 years old. Her mother is 5 years older.
Back then, the coverage treated it like standard celebrity intrigue. TMZ-style outlets framed it as a light, casual fling. Sources close to Diddy insisted he was healing after Kim Porter's sudden passing in late 2018, and insiders claimed Lori had been a longtime family friend who simply brought him comfort. Some reports even emphasized that Lori had always denied dating Diddy's son, Justin, despite years of speculation that she had been linked to him first. But today, in late 2025, that same 2019 timeline looks very different when placed next to what jurors heard in federal court. We now know that by that period, Diddy's alleged pattern of flying partners and hired participants to various cities for marathon encounters was already well established behind the scenes. We know witnesses described him using recordings as leverage and relying on a tight circle of staff to keep everything quiet and tightly controlled. Suddenly, those cozy photos from Italy and Mexico are not just cute couple snapshots. They look like images taken from the outer ring of a much darker orbit.
2 at 49.
Diddy is 49 years old.
Oh, man.
That is a 27-year.
Meanwhile, the Epstein emails released this year add another layer of context to how the ultra-wealthy viewed risk. Epstein's messages, many written in all lowercase with strange punctuation quirks like he, reveal a man so confident in his protection that he didn't even bother correcting obvious errors while discussing presidents, accusers, and sensitive situations. In one exchange from early 2019, he wrote that Trump knew about the girls and referenced staff testimony, confirming how often the future president was present. In another, he was strategizing with writer Michael Wolff about how to use Trump's public statements as leverage or currency. The tone is casual, dismissive, almost bored. It is the voice of someone who assumes nothing he types will ever threaten his freedom or his reputation in any meaningful way. That attitude matters because we have to ask whether a similar culture of protection has operated around men like Diddy and Steve Harvey. When Lori Harvey was photographed with Diddy and later seen again with her parents in Europe, fans turned to Steve's public feeds expecting some kind of response. Instead, they got silence. Articles at the time noted that while Lori and Diddy were trending, Steve was promoting his Sand and Soul Festival in Cancun and posting about his anniversary trips with Marjorie. Commenters were asking, "Where's Uncle Steve?" and openly questioning how a man who wrote a best-selling book on relationships could remain silent while his stepdaughter was rumored to be involved with a man nearly her father's age, someone who had already buried one partner and was known for extravagant, late-night environments.
So I just keep going through. But then I'll tell you something too. Haters motivate me. Because when they talking about me, that means I'm doing something.
We cannot ignore that this silence came from someone whose own private life was already being dragged through courts and blogs. Mary Harvey had gone on camera claiming that the division of assets from their Texas divorce was never handled the way a judge promised, that she had been left financially and emotionally destroyed, and that Steve had used his influence to push her to the margins while he rebranded himself as a self-help guru. His attorneys pushed back hard, saying they would vigorously defend and counterclaim. And over time, judges dismissed her major case. Still, those allegations of psychological torment and manipulation now sit uncomfortably beside the image of a stepfather who reportedly watched Lori sit across from Diddy at lunch and chose to keep every reaction behind closed doors. Insiders familiar with Hollywood's protection culture say that what appears to be silence from the outside is often a deliberate strategy crafted by managers, lawyers, and network executives. The logic is simple. Any comment from Steve acknowledging concern about Diddy would instantly trigger follow-up questions about what he had seen backstage at joint events, trips, or parties over the years. Harvey and Diddy have operated in overlapping circles since at least the mid-2000s, appearing at the same celebrations, award shows, and industry gatherings. If Harvey had publicly objected in 2019, reporters could have asked whether he was only now uncomfortable because paparazzi caught it on camera, or whether he had quietly ignored whispers circulating for years inside those rooms.
Now, I'm a Christian, but I ain't that good a Christian.
while Congress now pushes the Department of Justice to release all remaining Epstein-related files under a proposed Transparency Act. And while Diddy sits inside FCI Fort Dix with more than 70 civil lawsuits still hanging over his businesses and personal fortune, we are left examining Steve Harvey's choices with new eyes. On one side is the talk show host who tells women to know their worth and urges men to step up. On the other is the ex-wife who says she was emotionally destroyed. The stepdaughter who entered a rumored relationship with a man later convicted of serious misconduct involving paid encounters and coercive dynamics. And a long, unbroken stretch of strategic silence from a man who comments on almost everything else. The pattern that keeps emerging in these stories isn't just individual wrongdoing. It's networks of mutual protection. Epstein spoke casually about using damaging knowledge as leverage. Diddy's accusers described recordings and financial control used to keep people close and quiet. And Steve Harvey, according to legal filings and interviews, is a man who fought to control the narrative of his divorces while presenting himself as a redeemed, wiser figure. When we place all of that alongside the 2019 images of Lori and Diddy at family lunches, and the 2025 reality of fresh Epstein emails and a convicted mogul in a federal facility, the question starts to shift. It is no longer simply whether Steve Harvey brushed up against these worlds by accident. It becomes how far into that system he went, how much he understood about the men at his table, and how many decisions were made behind closed doors to ensure the rest of us never saw the full picture.
Hey, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Well, Steve's learning that the hard way tonight. Steve's ex-wife, Mary Harvey, is angry, and she's going public.
For years, we have been told that Steve Harvey's kingdom existed on a separate shelf from the nightmarish names of Jeffrey Epstein and Sean Diddy Combs. As if daytime talk shows, family game nights, and motivational tours existed in a different universe, from leaked emails, federal charges, and sealed affidavits. But when we examine the paper trail, that illusion begins to crack. The dismissal of Mary Harvey's $60 million lawsuit in 2017 was not a declaration of Steve's innocence. It was a Los Angeles judge saying the case belonged back in Texas, where the divorce was finalized in 2005, a technicality that punted the case while leaving allegations of soul destruction, deprivation, and psychological torment hanging in the air. Almost simultaneously, Epstein's emails from 2008 to 2019 show a man casually typing that Trump knew about the girls, referencing House staff testimony, and speaking about leverage as though it were standard business practice, not a warning signal. During that same period, Diddy was establishing the pattern that would ultimately lead to his 2025 conviction and 50-month sentence at a federal facility in New Jersey, a pattern prosecutors say involved travel, recruiting, and carefully managed private encounters spanning more than a decade. This is where the Real story comes into focus, not in a single photo or viral clip, but in a system of documentation. On one side, we have Epstein's 20,000-plus pages of correspondence released in November 2025, where his typos and rambling lowercase messages still outline a clear model of influence and pressure. On another, we have a Los Angeles court removing Mary Harvey's case from the docket due to jurisdiction, even as she appeared on YouTube claiming a judge had promised a fair division of assets that never materialized, and demanding accountability for years of emotional destruction. Hovering over all of this is Diddy's timeline, civil suits, whispered settlements, and eventually a federal jury that cleared him of the most explosive charges, but still found him guilty of transporting people across borders for paid encounters. Enough for the Bureau of Prisons to adjust his projected release date to June 2028 after internal discipline related to repeated substance violations.
Anything wrong that are suddenly going to be in the spotlight. And that's just a kind of a strange scenario that we're finding ourselves in. As to why they released it, I mean, look, the grand jury materials, I think, were kind of properly protected by a judge who said, no, it's not enough just that the world's really excited and wants to know kind of scurrilous details about Epstein and Maxwell. The judge, I think, properly, respected the statutory protections we have.
When we step back, a pattern emerges that some media lawyers call structured silence. Harvey's empire, estimated at around $200 million by multiple business outlets in the late 2010s, did not grow in a vacuum. It expanded while serious accusations were deflected, delayed, or dismissed. It grew while Mary's claims were rerouted to Texas, and then swallowed up in a maze of filings that never reached a full public trial. It grew while his image was polished by PR teams at major networks, landing him a lucrative 2017 book deal and a high-profile move to Fox, even as court documents from the same year included terms like torture, conspiracy against rights, and kidnapping in connection with his name. We are not talking about a random gossip blog. These are filings obtained by mainstream outlets, along with statements from his own attorneys calling the case meritless and promising to vigorously defend and counterclaim. Structured silence also appears in how Diddy's current prison situation has been managed. Official reports from inside FCI Fort Dix describe sanctions for substance-related rule violations, a narrative framed as a simple adjustment issue for a celebrity inmate. But insiders familiar with federal facilities note that such violations can also serve as a convenient catch-all when authorities are managing a high-profile figure whose presence carries security risks and potential embarrassment. According to a former corrections consultant, a star inmate who knows too much about executives, politicians, and decades of private gatherings is never just another number on the roster. He is a walking archive. When that inmate also faces more than 70 pending civil suits, some alleging coercive encounters captured on video, the stakes of every sanction, every hearing, and every early release review rise exponentially. Turning back to Epstein's emails, we see the same mentality in raw form. In 2019, he wrote that Trump knew about the girls, noted that a Mar-a-Lago employee had once worked for him, referenced House staff testimony, and suggested he might be the one able to take Trump down. He offered to provide images of Trump with young women in bikinis in his kitchen to a New York Times reporter, a batch of material the journalist later said never arrived. Epstein also discussed with Michael Wolff how he could use his knowledge as leverage. All of it was typed in that peculiar, sloppy lowercase with stray punctuation marks, as if consequences simply did not exist. This is the mindset of someone who believes the system will always bend around him. So where does Steve Harvey fit in? This brings us to what some industry veterans quietly call a protection racket for reputations. Epstein's circle reportedly included people who did not directly participate in his worst actions, but allegedly helped by keeping quiet, managing introductions, or smoothing over problems when victims spoke out. Diddy's world, according to former staffers who later sued, relied on managers, security, and aides who arranged travel, prepared locations, and handled payouts or non-disclosure agreements when nights went awry. During those same years, Steve Harvey was not just telling jokes. He was signing long-term deals that made him the face of family values, while his ex-wife appeared on camera claiming he owed her tens of millions and had ruined her life.
You know, he's a man with the power. He's in 60 markets. He's written these books. You know, he's socially connected with the programs and Disney and all these type people.
Look at 2017 in particular. That year, Mary's lawsuit made headlines with explosive accusations, including the term soul destruction, which she defined in her filing as a combination of deprivation and mental breaking. The case was quickly pushed aside on a jurisdictional technicality and never tested in a full trial. At the same time, Harvey was signing a major agreement with a leading publisher to expand the success of his relationship advice brand and moving his talk show into a new partnership, eventually leading to Steve appearing on a new network. Corporate America was betting on him as a safe pair of hands, a warm, fatherly presence who could sell books, ad slots, and festival tickets. The question arises, did these companies simply look away from the filings, or did they decide that, as long as the judge did not proceed, the accusations no longer mattered?
And my wish to you is success in millions and billions.
We also cannot overlook how skillfully Harvey has managed his brand during moments of crisis. When the Miss Universe fiasco happened in 2015, he turned a global embarrassment into a running joke and a surge of new bookings. When internal reports pointed to declining ratings on one network, he shifted to a different platform and expanded his festival and radio presence. That is not just charm, it is strategy. If a man can absorb that many public hits and still rise, imagine how carefully he would respond if questions about Epstein's leaks or Diddy's conviction ever came close to his own front door. Every silence, every no comment, every choice to highlight travel vlogs and motivational clips instead of addressing difficult questions becomes part of a pattern. So as we stand in late 2025, with Epstein's bizarre emails under scrutiny in Washington, Diddy serving time inside FCI Fort Dix, and Mary Harvey's old accusations resurfacing in viral social media clips, one thing is clear. Steve Harvey's story is not simply that of a smiling host whose name happened to brush against darker headlines. We are looking at a man whose fortune, estimated in the hundreds of millions, grew during the very years when the system was quietly showing him how power truly operates. Steve Harvey did not end up near Epstein's world by accident. He did not stay silent about Diddy by coincidence. And he did not build an empire on family values while his ex-wife spoke of torture and soul destruction because the system failed her. He built that fortune because the system functioned exactly as it was designed, protecting those who play along. So now the question is not whether Steve Harvey knew what was happening behind those closed doors, but who continues to run interference for him today, what they gain in return, and how many more secrets are waiting to surface when the next batch of files drops. What do you think truly connects these names? And when the truth finally comes to light, whose side will you believe? Until then, we will be watching every move. Stay sharp, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.